How do you decide what to preach at weddings without repeating yourself too much? Or is it saying the same basic thing every time or is saying the same basic thing every time not a problem? I don't do now nearly as many weddings as I used to. I've got folders just chock full of wedding homilies. And in my first 10, 15 years, I hardly ever repeated a wedding homily. I've got at least 60 wedding homilies that are different. And the answer is, how do you decide what to preach? Is you preach on anything that relates to love, or anything that relates to anger, or anything that relates to greed, or anything that relates to money, or and then you apply it to their wedding. One of the most controversial weddings I ever did, I think, was I preached at a good friend. They're good friends to this day, but I didn't realize till later it was controversial. He was in medical school, or going to medical school, and so I took as my text that you shouldn't want to be rich, and just said the biggest temptation you're going to be facing, one of the biggest you're going to be facing as a married couple, is that after you finish the medical job, you're going to make a lot of money, and that's really dangerous for a marriage. And so may I warn you about that and give you some ideas for how to handle it. And I found out later everybody at the wedding didn't like what I said. I do that all the time. I remember I did the same kind of thing for David and Edith Carlson. They're still here. I did that wedding, 7 years ago? And she's the librarian in the church here. And I can remember the sermon on money and simplicity of life in the old chapel. And they loved it, I think, because I knew where they were. And so basically, any truth can be a marriage sermon. You just then apply it to, here are two human beings. They happen to be, man and wife at this point, but two human beings who are going to have to relate to each other in some really tough situations. And the whole Bible relates to that. So I think pastors should try to say fresh things and not feel like they have to come back to Ephesians 5 every time. We're going to weave it in somewhere, probably, that the meaning of this marriage at its heart is, this is a symbol of covenant-keeping love between Christ and His church. But you don't have to preach on Ephesians 5 every time and say that as your main point every time, because there are 100 things to say that are fresh and good and powerful and that will be needful for this marriage. I'm just trying to think if there are any others I could remember that would be unusual. I've preached several times using my cow pie analogy, that you need to develop a compost pile in your marriage, because as soon as you step out of this church, one of you is going to put your foot in a cow pie, and it's going to stink, and the relationship's going to be messed up. And what are you going to do with it? Walk around in it all day, come back to it, smell it every day? No, you take it and you throw it in the compost pile and you go over and live in the green grass. But that issue still exists. You might have to go over and deal with it every now and then. And as you walk through life, you're going to be putting your foot in one cow pie after the other of relational difficulty and sin. And some people just live there, and it makes life totally impossible if you live in your cow pies. And it is possible to take each one, put it in the compost, know it's there, look each other right in the eye and say, I don't like this about you. I don't like this about you either. Okay, we're leaving that, and we're going over here, and we're living with what we love. It really, I think, is, a lot of people tell me they don't like that, but it's my way of doing it, and I think it's helpful. But preach on that.